Greetings. My name is Johanna White, and I'm the Instruction and Open Educational Resources Librarian here at Baton Rouge Community College. Today, I'd like to share with you a real-world example of OER creation in the classroom that might appeal to you all at BRCC. So, a subject close to my heart is, in fact, social justice and its role in education. There are those who would contend that education does enough to change lives economically and intellectually, so there's no more pressing need for action. After all, isn't it enough to introduce eager young minds to Plato, or organic chemistry, or to the imperfect tense in French? The answer is a resounding no. It isn't enough. We can do more, and we should, and I believe OER can help us achieve that. 2020, as we all know, was a watershed year for social justice activity in the face of repeated and ongoing police brutality, the resulting protests in the streets and at the polls. Many minority communities have endured a roller coaster of emotions in the last year: fear, loathing, doubt, despair, frustration, but there's also been some hope and some joy at positive events. I doubt we'll see another year quite like it. While we've just begun in academia analyzing and sharing what this last year has meant and what possibilities it creates for a more socially just future in this country, today I'd like to share about how open educational resources can help you create great assignments and subvert the bias in traditionally copyrighted materials, and even bring marginalized voices into your classroom through assignment creation that leads to OER creation. So I used to work at Xavier University of Louisiana, located in New Orleans, and I have this terrific example from my work there that I wanted to share with you all. I collaborated with a professor in communication studies, Dr. Sharon Roberts, and her area of specialization is broadcast journalism. In her Communication Studies 1100 course aimed at freshmen and sophomores, she envisioned a semester-long series of assignments to help her students gain experience in this case, basic journalism skills, such as project planning, interviewing, editing, and presenting information. Students had to do everything from finding a subject, writing interview questions, getting permission from the subject, lighting and filming the interview, editing, making a transcript, making closed captions, everything from soup to nuts. However, for you, this may involve less basic journalism skills or less video editing and more about content analysis of what your students do present. It's a terrific approach that works for lots of social science disciplines, like it could work for economics, political science, history, journalism, obviously. The resulting website that the students created, Minola My Story, 4 years ago in fall 2017, has been a real success, both from the perspective of strong student engagement during the course and the resulting research object that has been created. Every fall semester since then, Dr. Roberts has taught the course again and added to the site. She reports that some students who took the course as freshmen were so engaged that they changed their majors to communication studies. She also reports that students who are now seniors have come to her and asked if they could do another story for the Minola My Story project. If you can imagine having a student as a senior who wants to go back and redo something they did as a sophomore, that's pretty phenomenal. My initial contact with the class was a request from the professor to introduce students to Omeka, which is the free web platform she chose for the project. It is favored by libraries and museums for displaying individual objects, information, or even whole collections. I also introduced the students to the idea of metadata and why it's good to create excellent metadata in order to increase visibility of your project online. That must have worked because Dr. Roberts reports she's had emails from faculty members across the US, the UK, Europe, and Australia. So now I just want to show you a brief snippet of what the Minola My Story project looks like. So as this page loads, you'll see several colorful panels on the website. Each of these panels represents roughly a semester's worth of work. So here we see a photograph of one side of a famous New Orleans music club. So some of these videos will have something to do with music in New Orleans. So this one's about a local artist. This video embedded here is about Mardi Gras Indians and the music they create. This one's about fashion, and that one is another one about artists. So students work in groups of 4 to 5. So these, in this case, 4 videos represent enrollment of 16 to 20 students in a particular semester's course, and they work together on these projects. If we scroll down, there's another panel here with videos about this one that I've moused over is about the history of Treme, the oldest African-American neighborhood in the United States. There's another one here about a civil rights legend in town. Another one about learning to grow up in a family that participates in the social aid and pleasure club second lines. So there's a variety of things, and all of these photographs, the questions, the interviews, the video, the music that they blend with it, all of this is a student production, right? So this is the third semester's, this third panel, a third semester's worth of work by students. And again, it could be anything from a conversation with famed chef and civil rights leader Leah Chase on over to the role of barbershops in African-American life. So there's a variety of projects here capturing voices that are not often brought into the classroom. And that's one of the opportunities you have with a project like that, is to go out and capture voices. If students are doing, for example, 3 to 5 minute interviews that they are capturing on their phones, they can come back in and do content analysis of the attitudes that are represented in those interviews. So it could be a really interesting, highly engaging project for students to do. But I just wanted to show you kind of what this website looks like. You might want to go ahead and have a look at it at your leisure to explore what some of those possibilities are. So what I wanted to talk about is, if you go ahead and look at some of those videos on the website and the kinds of voices that are being brought into your classroom, these are not captured in traditionally copyrighted materials. They're not typically captured in the kinds of texts that we work with at school. So what I'd first like to do is talk a little bit about what the possibilities for social justice here that are present with an open educational resource that you create versus what traditionally copyrighted textbook materials offer us. So one of the first types of social justice achievable here is typically called redistributive justice. And as you can see from the definition, this is always going to be about the money piece. So this is really about access to education. This is the most commonly lauded and widely noted aspect of the OER. This is what helps level the playing field and enable access to education for those in our society who have less socioeconomic privilege, and for those around the world who live in societies that are much less than perfectly equipped to educate their populations. This is usually the big draw with OER. I think every instructor here knows how much a typical year's worth of textbooks costs, which is about $1,200. I think everyone here knows the student stories of beg, borrow, and slide by with regard to expensive textbooks. And I think everyone here can appreciate that the impact of these costs isn't just economic, but can change the course of an individual's trajectory in life. I'm on a mission to help you understand what the socioeconomic impact is of your choice of course materials. It is really no longer a matter of exercising unfettered intellectual freedom in your choice. There's a price to pay for that freedom, and up till now, we have unconsciously made our students pay for it. But we have the opportunity to do better. So the next type of social justice here, representational justice, is really going to be about power. This is about the right to represent your own identity and not be defined by those in power or those outside your group. This is about feeling seen and being validated in society. It's being able to say, I count because I can be seen. For communities of color or other minority groups that have been ignored or pigeonholed due to discrimination, this is truly the beginning of change. In order to deal with a person or a community, you must first be able to see them more clearly. I know of exactly 0 people who have done all the work to unlearn stereotypes they've absorbed in their lifetime. We're all a work in progress. But one of the first steps is learning about a community in its own words, in its own way, and respecting that process. It's not about having, in our case in academia, a publisher overlay their own bias, conscious and unconscious, onto the content of our course materials. Feeling seen, particularly in print, is a very powerful experience. It helps validate you not only in your own view, but also that of society. How many minorities have grown up not having had this experience? How many people have been forced to feel incomplete because of it? The answer is far too many. We, librarians and instructors, have the power to redress this imbalance. And we, along with the help of a WYSIWYG platform, have an easy means of doing so. It's not that complicated. Okay. It's harder than multiple choice quizzes or having a Pearson or McGraw-Hill platform auto-grade weekly assignments, but the payoff for the time and effort is so much more substantial and impactful. So the next kind of social justice that we can achieve in open educational resource creation is recognitive justice. So this is the most powerful piece of social justice that's present in the realm of open education. These concepts nest well and progress from the ideas of access to education to being truly represented in education to being recognized as equal in legitimacy as subjects for scholarly study. I feel that if these social justice possibilities were better known in the academic world, that more faculty would get on the proverbial bandwagon and make this part of their teaching. Although education as a societal good and as a human right is widely discussed in open education, Dr. Sarah Lambert, who is the academic that provided these definitions, is the first to situate these concepts and offer these as applied directly to open education. This is new ground, and it opens up a new and important space for us as educators to occupy. Now, if you go ahead and examine the MyNOLA My Story site as an example, we can start to see how some of those social justice pieces fall into place. So Xavier University of Louisiana is in fact an HBCU, and in fact BRCC is a PBI, a predominantly Black institution. We can see in this case students of color going out and documenting a community of color. The bias that's represented here is their bias, not something subtly or not so subtly layered over content by publishing house editors, writers, or proofreaders. This represents direct reporting and therefore represents authentic views of the subjects by your student journalists. So no whitewashing is present, and by that I mean editing for the use of standard American English or any class norms associated with dress, formality, or other bias typical of traditionally copyrighted material. So the students in this project have in fact enabled representational social justice. The students depicted in MyNOLA My Story, for example, have achieved that, and the instructor has also achieved it through the design of a course that facilitates those quiet or minority views to have airtime in online discussions. Now, if you look at recognitive justice, that involves the socio-cultural diversity in the open curriculum, aka the inclusion of images, case studies, or knowledges of women, indigenous peoples, or whoever is marginalized in a particular context, we can see that is also being enacted here. So students build over the course of the semester that OER that you can build on in semesters to follow, therefore creating your own research object, something that you can write about and publish about, either from the idea of pedagogy or from social justice or from open education. And if you go ahead and open up your OER by posting it in Canvas, by posting it on the OER Commons, by posting it on your own private website, guess what? It can be open and available for others' inspiration, learning, and possible research. So if you have more questions about working on a project, enacting a project that will in fact help you create an OER and bring your students a higher level of engagement and fun in the classroom, please email me at whitej2@mybrcc.edu or check out my LibGuide on OER at guides.mybrcc.edu/OER. Thanks and have a wonderful day.